All right. So, as I said, the process that we're going to be doing today is creating covers for our book. And a couple examples for those just joining us as well. We're going to be doing two type of book covers today. One is a two-panel book cover that's made from a front and back piece, separate pieces. And then the other one that we're going to be doing is a single piece. Front and back where it's combined. It's not separate, just a slight variation on that. And I'll talk more about those in just a moment. But these are kind of examples of what we'll be doing today. Now the supplies that we need, if you have your kit with you, we'll be using that glue stick today. So go ahead and pull that glue stick out. If you don't have a glue stick with you, really any type of glue or adhesive will work. If you have like tacky glue or Elmer's glue, double stick tape, double-sided tape, all those will work. You just need a strong adhesive. I like using the glue stick because it dries quickly. And so it's easier for me to use, but definitely use whatever feels comfortable. So that glue stick is what we'll use in our kit today. The next thing we'll need is going to be a pair of scissors. We're going to be doing, like I said, two different types of book covers today. And I'm going to be demoing how to do it with fabric and with paper. So we'll do a variety of supplies. But those scissors are going to be helpful regardless of what supply we use. We'll need those scissors. The next thing we need is going to be our base. So the base we're using for the cover that we're actually going to cover. And so one of the things that I like using are just pieces of cardboard that I cut from the back of a notepad, an old notepad or sketchbook. You can also use kind of what we did last week too. If you have like old like snack boxes or food boxes, that's a good cover base as well. It's thick enough to be like sturdy, but it's thin enough that it's easy to work with. I think what I found, one of the best materials that I've found to work with is the back of a notepad, but you can use any type of cardboard, even the thick cardboard that comes in like boxes works well. But any type of stiffer like cardboard is going to work well. So we'll need that cardboard. And then the last thing we need today is going to be what we use for our covers. And so I have with me today, I have a couple squares of fabric that I'm going to use, and I have some wrapping paper, used wrapping paper. So I'll be using these for my cover today. For other covers, you can use, of course, fabric works well. I've used pieces of leather or even felt. You can use magazine pages, origami paper, construction paper, pieces from a calendar, even newspaper sometimes are fun to use as a cover. So you can really be creative with the type of material we use to cover our cardboard. Okay. All right. So again, all the supplies we'll need today are going to be that glue stick, the pair of scissors, the cardboard that we use for the base of the cover, and then the material we use to cover that cardboard with. Right. Now this morning, Sarah emailed out those illustrated instructions. And so I just want to show those really quickly. We'll be doing that two-panel book cover. We'll start with that one. And just like all our illustrated instructions, we have the list of supplies at the top, which I just went over, and then the step-by-step process and how to make it. I'll be guiding us through it today. But this is what we'll be following along with. So we'll start with that two-panel book cover. And then we're going to finish today by doing a variation of that, using a single piece for a book cover. All right, so let's start off. We're going to do that two-panel book cover. And so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of lay my instructions here so we can kind of follow along with that as well. All right, so if you have the cardboard that you're going to use, whether it's a snack box, a cereal box, or like the back of a notepad, or just cardboard from a box, a tissue box or anything, go ahead and pull that cardboard out. You can see I've got like scraps of cardboard that I've been collecting. And so I'm going to start off by doing that two-panel book cover. So I'm going to need 2 pieces of cardboard and 2 pieces of paper or fabric. And so the fabric that I'm going to be using today, I just have two squares, quilting squares that I'm going to be using. So they're already cut to size. If you're using scrap fabric, you want to kind of make those two pieces the same size, or at least similar in size, close in size. So my squares that I'm working with today are 4x4 squares, but you can make it larger or smaller. However you want to do it is good. This is something that can easily size up or down. But for today, I'm going to be using those 4x4, two 4x4 squares. Okay. And so I have my cardboard pieces. I have a smaller piece here. And so what I want to do with my cardboard is I'm going to cut it so it's slightly smaller than my fabric piece. Right. And so if my fabric is 4x4, then I want to make my cardboard piece just slightly smaller. So when I lay that cardboard piece on top of the fabric, you can see a frame of the fabric all the way around. And so I'm just going to take my marker here. I know, oh, I just said question. Oh, we're on the same page. I was just going to say I'm using squares today, but that's because my fabric started off as a square. You can do rectangular pieces, and that's totally okay too. This is like an easy way. It's really easy to vary this shape. So if you're doing a square like I am, or if you're doing a rectangle, either one will work well. You can see, let me move this cardboard out the way. So you can see I have my cardboard kind of laying on top of my fabric here. You can see a frame on two sides. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a mark on my cardboard that's slightly in from that edge of the fabric. And I'm going to do the same on the other side too. Just make a little mark. Because what I'm going to do now is trim that cardboard. You can do that with scissors, if you have an X-Acto knife, or paper cutter. Whatever you use to cut it is good. But what I'm going to do, actually, I'm just going to take a ruler really quickly and mark it all the way down. Okay. And so what we're wanting to do, you can see I drew my square here. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And again, if you're using like a cereal box or tissue box, your cardboard's going to be a little easier to cut. If you're using something a little thicker, like a cardboard box, it's helpful to use like an X-Acto knife or something like that. But I cut out my one square, and you can see it fits inside my piece of fabric, right? And again, I'm doing a square today. You can definitely do a rectangle if you like. It doesn't have to be the square. It works. So I have my one square cardboard side cut out, and it's the same size as my piece of fabric. And so I'm going to go over and I'm going to cut out a second one, second piece of cardboard. So I'm just going to lay that cardboard on top and draw it. Because we're doing two separate covers, like a front cover and a back cover, we're going to need two of the same size pieces of fabric and two of the same size pieces of cardboard. And so go ahead and cut that cardboard out if you have it with you. They don't have to be square. They can be rectangle if you want. The only reason I'm doing a square is because my fabric was square already cut. But if you want a rectangle, you can definitely trim that. The only thing you want to pay attention to is you need your front cover and your back cover to be the same in size. So you need two pieces of the same size fabric or paper, and then two pieces of the same size cardboard. Okay. So I've got my two pieces of cardboard, my two pieces of fabric. And again, like if you want to use paper, you can do two separate pieces of paper here as well. It doesn't have to be fabric. But for our purposes, the covers we're doing today, that fabric and paper can be interchangeable. So if you're not doing fabric, doing paper here works just as well. So our next step, once we get our cardboard cut, is I'm going to go ahead and lay that cardboard on top of um, my fabric or paper. Right? And so you can see with my cardboard, there's a little frame that's all the way around. That's what we want to see. Because what we're going to do, if you see the illustrated instructions too, just kind of following along, we're going to kind of fold those flaps over. So we'll have, let me pull my example out. So you'll have a nice smooth cover, right? So I'm going to take my first piece, and what's helpful for me is, and I'm using a marker just so it's easier to see on camera, but what's helpful for me is to draw that line. And so what I'm going to do is draw a line at each of the corners of my cardboard and cut that off. So what that looks like is just drawing that line. So I'm making like a little triangle, right? And I'm doing that with all my corners.
With the socks I come. Yeah. Okay. You guys packages at 12.
And I'm doing, if you can see, I'm doing that mark right up against the corner of my cardboard piece, right? So I'm drawing that line that's cutting off the corners of that fabric or paper, right? And that line is right up against the corner of that cardboard.
This is the best time to steal.
So what we're going to do now is kind of trim those edges, right? Those marks we made. And definitely let me know if I need to go back or repeat anything. So I laid that cardboard on top of the paper, have that, or paper or fabric, and I have an edge that's showing. And so then I went through and drew those lines on the corners because we're going to cut those corners off, right? And we're making flaps to kind of fold around our cardboard. So I'm going to move my cardboard for just a moment and cut those flaps, those triangle pieces off. Okay. And so it's not super special or detailed, I guess, in the way we do the cut, but you can see I cut off those corner pieces, right? Where I made the mark, I cut them off. So when I put my cardboard back on, you can see those lines that were, let me move this up a little bit. You can see those lines that we drew, that cut, the corner of that cardboard goes right up against it, right? So we're just cutting off the corners of our fabric or paper. And I'm going to do the same with my other cover here. So I have my cardboard in the center, and whether you're using paper or fabric, it's the same thing. We're just going to make that mark going kind of in those corners, just kind of showing us where to cut because we're going to chop off those corners, right? And so I have that cardboard piece butting up right against those marks that I drew. So I'm going to move my cardboard piece and just trim those edges. And just cutting them off. So whether you're doing that paper or you're doing the fabric, it's that same setup. We're making sure that cardboard is slightly smaller than the fabric or paper. And then we're just trimming those edges off. And so you can see, again, like just with the other one, the corner of that cardboard butts up against that line. And we've cut those corners of that fabric or paper off. So now what we have are two pieces. We have our front cover and our back cover. So this is where that glue stick comes in. And again, if you don't have a glue stick, if you don't have your kit yet, any type of adhesive will work. The glue stick just works faster, but you can use tacky glue, you can use Elmer's glue, double-sided tape, even like Mod Podge will work for this. But what we're going to do, our next step, is to glue these flaps that we just made onto our cardboard. Okay. So let's go ahead, if you have your glue stick or any kind of adhesive, what we're going to do is just kind of make an edge, do a little glue on the edge of that cardboard on the top. And I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom as well. So I'm doing a nice layer of that glue on my top and bottom. And so that next step is to take that flap and fold it over. So you see that edge is folded over. And I'm going to do that with the bottom as well. So if you have your adhesive and your fabric or paper already cut, go ahead and lay that down. Put that glue down and then fold those pieces over. So you can see we've got two of the opposite ends glued down. I will say I've found that it's a little easier for me to glue opposite ends. So to do the top and bottom and then do side to side, or the other way, do side and side and then do top and bottom, because it helps that fabric or paper stay a little straighter, and you don't have as many opportunities for wrinkles. You can pull it a little tighter that way. And then once we have those two flaps done, we'll just kind of add some more glue to the sides. And then fold those flaps over as well. I have, for my piece here, you can see I have just a small edge sticking out for these flaps. They can be wider. It doesn't have to be small like this. It can be, you can have a little more of an edge on there. But once you glue them down, you have that cover, that straight cover on the top. And this could be my front or back cover. And you can see I did it with fabric, but you can do that with paper as well. So after I do one, I'm going to go ahead and do the other. So if you're working on yours as well, go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and glue down our front cover and our back cover. So I'm going to do the top and bottom to start with. And then just fold those flaps over. And I'm pulling it somewhat tight. I know I'm using just a plain cotton fabric today, so it has a little bit of a pull to it. But if you're using paper or a different type of fabric, it may be a little stiffer. And all of them work well. So I'm going to go ahead, now that I've done my two sides, I'm going to do the other two sides. Just kind of add that glue stick or any kind of adhesive that you have, and then fold those flaps over. And just kind of press it in. All right. So we have those two cardboard pieces that are covered in, mine are in fabric, but maybe yours is in paper or fabric. But you can see they're the two same covers that I can use as a front and back for my book now. So when we add our book cover to this, you can do a couple different types of books. One of the book that I have in our illustrated instruction is just a simple accordion book. And the accordion book is just like paper that's kind of folded together to make this kind of accordion shape. And so what I'll do with this piece is I'll just glue down one of those sides to my cover, right? So let's look at the finished piece that I have here. You can see my front cover, my fabric. I have that piece of paper, that first page is glued down to my cover. Okay. So I can open it up, and the same is done with the back cover as well, right? Those last pieces are glued onto that, to the covers. Okay. And depending on how you do your cover itself, you can, like the paper, your book can completely cover up that cardboard. Or what you can do is add another strip of fabric on top to kind of glue it down, or paper. So that is how to do the 2-panel book cover. So when I do my accordion fold to make it this size, I'm just going to make sure that the paper I'm using for the accordion fold is going to be a little smaller than my cover, right? So I just want to make sure, just kind of the same thing I did with the cardboard and the fabric or paper. I just want to make sure that there's a little edge. And so I'm going to use a pin and just make that mark. So when I do my fold, I'm just going to cut that strip. If you have a paper cutter, I know sometimes that's a little easier than doing it with scissors. But I have that strip of paper. And then I'll just, again, I just want to make sure that it is slightly smaller than my cover. And I can just do that accordion fold back and forth. You can also do the punch journal that we did last week. That'll work well for this also. And you just glue down those two papers. Now let's talk a little bit about the variation that we're using. You know, the example I just showed with this 2-panel book cover was done with fabric, but I'll do paper for this one. And again, know that whatever, whether you're using fabric or paper, they're interchangeable for this. So if you use fabric for one, you can use paper for that same one. So I'm using some wrapping paper that I just thought was really pretty and might make a really nice book cover. So I'm going to make a book cover out of this pretty paper. And we'll start off the same way by taking that cardboard. So if you're using like a cereal box or, you know, whatever you're using for your cardboard piece, the back of a notepad, or even just pieces from a box, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and cut that cardboard to the size that we want our book to be. So I have just a strip of, it came from the back of a sketch pad, I think. And so I'm just going to kind of cut it down a little bit. I'm going to make a rectangular one this time. So it's just short of 12 inches. So I'm going to do about 5 inches. And again, you know, just like the last one, you can do a square or you can do a rectangle. Either way, it'll work well. Either way will work well. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to get my paper cutter here to cut, but you can use scissors, paper cutter, whatever you have with you will work for this X-Acto knife. I'm just going to kind of trim that. So to do that book cover variation, that second one that we're looking at, we'll need those same supplies. We'll need 2 cardboard pieces, our glue stick and scissors, but we're also going to need just 1 large piece of paper or fabric because we're doing these 2 panels together instead of doing separate ones like we just did 2 separate covers. And so what I'm going to do is take my covers. My covers for here are 4x5 square. And so I'm just going to open that wrapping paper up and place my cardboard inside. Placing them together. And what we're going to do is very similar to what we did with the 2 separate pieces. We're going to cut that paper or fabric slightly larger than our cardboard pieces. Okay? And so I'm just going to make Well, let me use a marker. I'm just going to make that mark slightly larger. Actually, let me come to the end because we want a little bit hanging off. Let's see. Let me move this down. So I'm going to use the corner of my paper here. I have a little bit of an edge, and like you can have a wider edge or a smaller edge, thinner edge, whichever feels more comfortable is good. It doesn't have to be a huge hunk. I'm going to do about half an inch of a border, but I'm just going to kind of make that mark. And with our last piece, when we were doing two separate covers, we cut the paper or fabric the size of each individual piece of cardboard, right? But for this one, we're doing that one piece. Instead of one piece for each of the cardboard, we're doing one piece for both of the cardboards, right? And so I'm just going to take my ruler and just make that mark all the way down. So it depends, that gap that we're leaving, it depends on how big you want your book to be. If let's say I'm using that simple punch stitch from last week, I have just a thin, this is an example of that. It's the 2 holes that I made and thread that embroidery floss through that simple punch stitch. And so it's just really thin. This is just 10 pages. So it's not a huge book. So I don't need a big gap. So for something like this, I can do a much smaller gap, but you're wanting to make sure at least that you have enough here to fold over on itself. And so for something like this, that's about 10 pages, doing it maybe like half an inch is a good mark. So the inside, if you're doing a thin book like this, thin punch stitch, you'll want something that's about half an inch. If you're doing something a little thicker, you want it a little larger. For the one I did, my example here, it was about half an inch that I had between my cardboard pieces. So once you get that kind of measurement, let me move these out of the way. Once you get this measurement, you have your paper or fabric measured out to slightly larger than your cardboard pieces. I'm going to move these aside and just take a moment and cut that paper out. So I'm just doing a little cutting to get that square out. Again, you can use scissors or paper cutter, but I have that really nice piece of wrapping paper that I'm using. All right. So whatever you want to be the cover, if you're using wrapping paper like I am, I'm going to put that face down. If you're using like pattern paper or pattern fabric, you want that pattern on facing down because we're going to take that cardboard and we're going to put it back inside. Okay. And so you can see that we still have that edge going all the way around. We have about half an inch in the center. So we're going to do, our next step is just like those separate pieces. I'm going to use a marker so it's easier to see, but we're going to cut off those corners again. So I'm just going to take my marker and draw that line all the way across. And I'm just doing it with the 4 outside edges. I'm not doing it for each individual cardboard. I'm doing it those 4 outside edges. Right. And just like we did with that, those 2 separate pieces, we'll trim that off. But what we're wanting to see is the corner of that cardboard touching the mark that we made, right? And we're going to cut it so it's right up against that cardboard. So I'm going to just move these out of the way and do a little trim. That I think is can be a lot easier too if you want to glue that down, and it doesn't have to be like perfectly glued down like a whole lot of glue. Even doing just a little dab will help hold it in place. All right. All right. So we can see those corner pieces of the cardboard are right up against those pieces we cut out. Right, we have about a 1/2 inch in between. And so we'll do that same thing. I am going to go ahead and just put a little dot of glue in the center to help hold down my cardboard piece while I'm folding things over. I'm going to do that in both my pieces here. And again, it doesn't have to be a huge amount, but just a little bit. Make sure that those corner pieces, those outside corner pieces of the cardboard are touching those lines. And then we'll do the same thing like the other one. We're going to glue those flaps down. So we're going to fold over those pieces. So I'm taking a little glue. And again, let me know if I need to go back over something or show it over again. But we're going to take that little bit of glue and fold over that piece and press it in place. I'm using just regular glue stick today, but you can use like a lot of adhesives will work for this project. And so I'm gluing that other side and gluing that flap down as well. So that's the same, that just like our other cardboard that we were gluing down, we're gluing those two opposite sides first, right? Folding those flaps over. So we did that with our piece here. The difference is that when we do the top and bottom, we're going to do it for both of those cardboard pieces, right? So whereas here we just did it with one piece, we had the two separate pieces of fabric or paper, here we're going to glue it all the way across. So I'm going to take my glue stick and just add some glue all the way across the top of the cardboard, both sides, both cardboards, and then fold that paper over and press it down. If you're using fabric for this one, or even like a thicker paper for your cover, sometimes it's helpful to use like a binder clip or something like that, binder clip to hold it down and give added pressure while you're working. Or when you're done doing the gluing, add those binder clips. They can be a little helpful too. But I folded over that top piece, and now I'm going to do it to the bottom, adding that strip of glue and folding over that bottom piece. So you can see with my piece now, I've glued down those sides. So I have, if I flip it over, it's one piece now instead of those, like with our other one, we had those two separate panels. This one, it's that one piece that we're using. Okay. So when I fold it over, I have that little bit of a spine. Yeah. And so what I am going to do right now for mine is just kind of fold it over a little bit, and with some binder clips, just hold it in place for a moment. Give it a little pressure. So I'm going to let that sit for just a moment. Let's go back to my example here. So this one, I used a piece of wallpaper as the cover. And you can see it's that one piece of wallpaper, but on the inside, it was two separate pieces of cardboard. And so what I used here was just a simple punch stitch book and glued that first page down to that cardboard. And so that's what we'll do for this one too. But know that you can still do an accordion fold for this book. You can do all sorts of inserts for the inside. Just the example that I have in the illustrated instructions are for the punch stitch journal. Just a little pressure on my book here. And so when I add that punch stitch journal here, you can see for that book that I did, I already tied it off on the inside. So I'm not tying it through my paper or fabric that I just did for my cover. I'm only tying it through the paper inside for the inside. And so here, again, you want to make sure that your paper is slightly smaller than your cover. And so I'm just going to real quickly cut that off. I'm going to use a paper cutter really quickly and just kind of trim off those edges for myself. You can use scissors, paper cutter, whatever you have, X-Acto knife, whatever you have to cut it. We're just kind of trimming it, your insert, so it fits inside your book. So I've got my simple punch stitch book that I've tied off already, and it fits right inside my journal. Okay. And so what I'll do to add the paper to my cover is I'll use my glue stick again, but I'll cover that top paper with the glue and then press it in to my cover. And then do the same with the back. Cover that last page with the glue and then close it and let it sit. And then you have another book cover.